The endless sea of gold-colored dunes has long seemed a place where nothing can hide. Yet beneath that shifting blanket lie secrets that have whispered through caravans for millennia. What if the very ground beneath the Arabian desert is a vault of forgotten worlds, a labyrinth of stone, water, and bone that no modern explorer has fully charted? Travel back to the early 1900s, when British officers and Bedouin scouts first reported strange, low-frequency hums echoing from the heart of the RUB letter 2BF Al-Khali, the empty quarter. Locals called the phenomenon the breath of the desert, claiming the sound rose at dusk, lingered for minutes, then vanished without a trace. Some scholars suggest the hum could be a natural resonance created by wind moving through a network of subterranean caverns. Yet geological surveys have yet to confirm such chambers in a region dominated by compacted sand and limestone. Further north, near the ancient city of Ubar, once thought to be a mythic Atlantis of the sands, archaeologists uncovered a massive stone platform buried under layers of sand, its surface etched with a repeating pattern of interlocking circles. The design bears an uncanny resemblance to the star maps found on Bronze Age tablets from the Indus Valley, prompting one theory that a lost trade route linked these civilizations far earlier than history admits. Even more baffling, satellite imagery released in 2018 revealed a series of perfectly straight, rectangular outlines buried beneath the dunes, stretching for kilometers like the foundations of a forgotten city. Infrared scans detected anomalously low temperatures within these outlines, hinting at the presence of underground voids filled with ancient ice or perhaps a stagnant body of water preserved for thousands of years. Local legends speak of the buried kingdom of the Jinn, a realm of crystal-filled caverns where time stands still. While skeptics dismiss these tales as folklore, the growing body of unexplained data, acoustic anomalies, enigmatic stonework, and geometric depressions suggests the desert may be a silent keeper of a civilization erased by shifting sands. What ancient hands carved these patterns? What forces keep the hidden chambers cool enough to preserve ice in a climate that can scorch the surface to 50 degrees Celsius? As we peer deeper into the Arabian underworld, each clue only deepens the mystery, leaving us to wonder whether the desert's true treasure is not gold or oil, but a portal to a forgotten epoch still waiting, patient and unseen, beneath the endless dunes. What if an entire kingdom, once thriving on the spice routes, simply erased itself from the map, leaving only a whisper of dunes and a handful of brittle tablets? The legend of Ubar, often called the Atlantis of the desert, has haunted travelers for centuries, a tale that begins in the scorching heart of the Arabian Peninsula and ends in a mystery that still refuses to surrender its final truth. Ancient Arab geographers wrote of a city of immeasurable wealth, a place where frankincense and myrrh were born, and where caravans disappeared into a glittering metropolis before reappearing laden with treasures. Ibn al-Mawsil, a 10th-century chronicler, described Ubar as a city of 4 gates and a palace that shone like the sun. He claimed its rulers commanded a network of oasis towns that stretched from Yemen to the Levant, their power anchored by a single, massive well that never ran dry. For most of history, the story lived only in poetry and oral tradition, dismissed by scholars as myth. Then, in the early 1990s, a team of archaeologists led by a Dutch explorer used satellite imagery to trace an ancient caravan route, now visible only as a faint, linear disruption in the sand. The image led them to a vast, rectangular enclosure near the modern village of Shisar, a place where wind-blown dunes conceal a network of limestone walls, collapsed towers, and a massive stone platform that could have once supported a grand palace. Excavations revealed a sophisticated settlement, intricately carved stone doors, a complex irrigation system that tapped a deep aquifer, and most compellingly, a cache of bronze vessels stamped with a symbol that matches the seal found on ancient frankincense trade contracts. Radiocarbon dating places the city's zenith around the 6th to 7th centuries CE, right before the rise of Islam dramatically reshaped the region's trade routes. Why did Ubar vanish? One prevailing theory suggests that the city's lifeblood, its well, was a fragile underground reservoir. As trade shifted and the desert climate grew harsher, over-extraction may have caused the water table to collapse, turning the oasis into a sinkhole that swallowed the palace in a single night of sand-filled fury. Some locals still speak of a great sandstorm that rose without warning, burying the city beneath dunes that have never fully shifted away. Other scholars propose a more human cause, the sudden decline of the frankincense trade, driven by changing religious practices and the emergence of new maritime routes, could have left Ubar economically crippled, its elite fleeing and abandoning the settlement to the desert's relentless embrace. Whatever the cause, the air above the ruins still hums with an unsettling quiet. The wind whistles through collapsed arches, scattering tiny shards of pottery like ghostly confetti. At night, the desert sky swallows the horizon, and the stars seem to pulse over the forgotten walls, as if the very cosmos remembers a civilization that once commanded the scent of the heavens. The story of Ubar remains unfinished, a lingering question etched into the sand. Did the desert simply claim a city, or did a once glorious empire disappear because of a secret too dangerous to survive? The answer, like the dunes themselves, shifts with each grain of time. What if an entire civilization rose from the dunes, only to vanish without a trace, leaving scholars to chase a phantom on the map? A city that never touched the earth. In the heart of the Sahara, where the sun scorches the horizon and the wind writes hieroglyphs across the sand, a legend persists. The Atlantis of the Sands, a shimmering oasis described by 19th-century Arab caravaneers as a metropolis of white marble towers, gardens fed by crystal springs, and streets paved with basalt that glowed under the moon. The first written account comes from the French explorer Charles de Foucauld, who claimed that in 1905, his Bedouin guide swore he had seen the city's silhouette rise from a mirage after a night of relentless sandstorms. De Foucauld's journal describes a sudden hush, the scent of jasmine drifting on dry air, and the sound of a distant market chant echoing across the dunes. Yet when the next sunrise painted the horizon in gold, the city dissolved, leaving only rippling dunes and a shallow depression where water once seemed to pool. Archaeologists have chased that ghost for over a century. In the 1930s, German expeditions equipped with early aerial photography mapped a faint rectangular outline beneath the sand, prompting a wave of speculation. Some scholars argue the structure is a natural basaltic outcrop eroded into geometric shapes. Others suggest it could be the remnants of an ancient caravanserai, its walls now buried beneath layers of windblown silt. Modern satellite imagery adds another layer of mystery. Infrared scans occasionally reveal a subtle temperature anomaly, a cooler patch that persists through the hottest months, as if a subterranean reservoir still clings to the memory of water. Ground-penetrating radar surveys in 2018 detected a series of regular, man-made cavities at depths of 20 to 30 meters, aligned in a pattern that mirrors the cardinal points described in the original accounts. Yet no pottery, no bones, no inscriptions have emerged from those depths, only compacted sand and occasional quartz, crystals that glitter like distant stars. Local Bedouin folklore keeps the story alive, warning travelers of the city that beckons the thirsty and devours the curious. Some elders claim the oasis appears only when the moon is a thin crescent, a thin veil that separates reality from illusion. Others whisper that the mirage is a protective spell, cast by a forgotten people to hide their sacred knowledge from invading armies. No definitive answer has emerged, and perhaps that is the true essence of the desert's secret. The Sahara is a living archive of wind and time, erasing and preserving in equal measure. The Atlantis of the Sands may be nothing more than a collective hallucination, a mirage born of desperate thirst and the human need to find order in endless emptiness. Or it may be the ghost of a civilization that once mastered the art of drawing water from stone, a society erased before history could record its name. Until a piece of undeniable proof surfaces, an inscribed tablet, a buried throne, a living descendant of its people, the dunes will continue to whisper, and the mirage will forever hover on the edge of belief, leaving us to wonder what truly lies beneath the shifting sands. Imagine a night so black that even the stars seem to have been swallowed, and beneath your boots, the cold stone of a forgotten desert wall whispers secrets older than any empire. For centuries, travelers have trekked the scorching dunes of Central Asia, following routes that vanished with the wind. Yet some of those pathways were not merely remembered. They were immortalized in stone, etched by hands that understood that memory could be erased by sand as easily as a caravan could be lost. These enigmatic carvings, scattered across the rugged cliffs of the Pamir, the basaltic outcrops of the Badakhshan foothills, and the limestone escarpments of the Iranian plateau, form a network of what scholars now call the stone caravan maps. Each panel is a labyrinth of incised lines, stylized symbols, and tiny pictographs that depict winding routes, oasis markers, and what appears to be a series of waypoints marked by strange, almost hieroglyphic beasts. What makes them truly unsettling is not just their age. Radiocarbon dating of organic residues in the mortar suggests they were created between 800 BCE and 200 CE. But the precision with which they mirror later, documented trade routes such as the Silk Road. Some researchers argue the maps were a pre-Silk Road guide, a secret ledger of merchants who moved silk, jade, and spices long before the great caravans of Xuanzang. Others propose a ritual function. Each line could represent a pilgrimage path to sacred mountains, the symbols encoding protective prayers against bandits and desert spirits. One panel, discovered near the ancient settlement of Sharai Sakhet, shows a series of concentric circles intersected by a jagged line. Near the circles, a tiny carving of a horse with 4 heads has been interpreted by some as a warning of a 4-way crossroads, a place where travelers could be ambushed from any direction. Yet the same motif also appears on a bronze amulet from the same layer, hinting at a shared mythic language that bound merchants together across cultures. The mystery deepens when you consider the materials. The stone was not locally sourced. Petrographic analysis reveals basalt from a quarry over 200 kilometers away, suggesting a coordinated effort to transport both the stone and the knowledge it carried. And the tools? The incisions are too fine for simple chisels. Microscopic examination shows a metal tip, perhaps an early iron or bronze stylus, predating known widespread iron use in the region. Some historians, like Dr. Layla Farhadi, argue that these maps were the earliest form of a logbook, a physical, unchanging record that could survive the betrayal of memory in a world where oral tradition could be snuffed out by a single storm. Others caution against romanticizing the stone, pointing out that many of the symbols could be mere decorative motifs, their apparent coherence an illusion created by modern eyes seeking patterns. What we do know, however, is that every time an archaeologist brushes away centuries of dust, a new segment of the network emerges, linking a distant oasis to another with an elegance that feels almost impossible for its age. The stone routes whisper of a world where trade was not just an economic activity, but a sacred act, guided by unseen hands that wanted their pathways to endure long after the caravans had turned to dust. And as the wind sweeps across the barren plateau, the faint echo of hooves, real or imagined, continues to reverberate, leaving us to wonder. Were these stone maps a practical tool, a spiritual talisman, or something far more enigmatic, a relic of a civilization whose very purpose was to chart the unknown? The wind that sweeps across the desert of eastern Yemen carries with it a faint, metallic whisper, as if the sand itself remembers a secret long buried beneath its grains. At the heart of this desolate plain rise the Shisar pillars, 3 monolithic stone columns that thrust skyward like the fingers of some forgotten god. Their surfaces are smooth, almost polished, yet untouched by the tools of any civilization we know. No quarry marks, no chisel marks, no evidence of human hands ever laid claim to their creation. What makes Shisar truly unsettling is not merely their sheer size. Each pillar stands close to 30 meters tall, but the geometry etched into their faces. Interlocking hexagons, perfect circles within perfect circles, and a series of angles that align with the solstices with a precision that would challenge even modern engineers. One face of the central pillar bears a series of concentric triangles that, when projected onto the horizon at sunrise on the summer solstice, point directly toward an invisible line connecting the ancient city of Marib and the distant ruins of Ubar. Some scholars argue this alignment could be a celestial calendar, yet the mathematical complexity goes far beyond simple timekeeping. The stones themselves are composed of a basaltic rock that, under microscopic examination, reveals a crystalline structure not found in any local quarry. Isotopic analysis suggests the material originated from a volcanic eruption that occurred over 2,000 years before the earliest known settlements in the region. Yet no volcanic ash layers corresponding to such an event have ever been identified nearby, and no oral tradition among the Bedouin tribes mentions a cataclysm of that magnitude. Local legends speak of the sleeping giants, spirits that guard a hidden repository of knowledge. One elder recalled a story passed down from his great-grandfather. A caravan of traders once attempted to quarry the pillars, only to be struck down by an inexplicable sandstorm that appeared in seconds, as if the desert itself rose to protect the stones. The survivors fled, leaving behind only a single, weather-worn tablet inscribed with a series of glyphs that have defied translation for decades. Some linguists see echoes of the South Arabian script, while others detect patterns reminiscent of the enigmatic Nabta Playa megaliths. Scientists who have visited Shisar report an odd, low-frequency hum that can be heard when the wind passes through the pillar's hollows, an acoustic phenomenon that resonates at a frequency aligning with the human brain's theta waves, the state associated with deep meditation and altered consciousness. Could this be an intentional design, a way to induce trance in those who approach? Or is it merely a natural acoustic anomaly amplified by the pillar's precise shape? The mystery deepens when satellite imagery reveals that the three pillars form a perfect equilateral triangle, each side measuring exactly 200 meters. Within that triangle, hidden beneath the dunes, lie subtle depressions that some researchers propose could be the remnants of an underground chamber, a vault that may have once housed artifacts, scrolls, or even a map to a lost civilization. Excavations have been prohibited by local authorities, citing the sacred nature of the site, leaving us with only speculation and the echo of the desert wind as our companion. So the question remains, hanging like a shroud over the dunes, were the Shisar pillars the work of an ancient, technologically sophisticated culture now erased from history, or are they a natural marvel that somehow mimics the hand of a master architect? The stones stand silent, their geometry a puzzle that refuses to yield, waiting for someone, perhaps centuries from now, to finally decipher the language they have kept hidden beneath the relentless sun. Deep beneath the endless dunes of the Rub al Khali, the empty quarter, a landscape of scorching silence and shifting sands, a secret glints with a cold, metallic sheen. In 2019, a team of Saudi Arabian archaeologists, following the faint outline of a satellite anomaly, uncovered a cluster of artifacts that have since haunted every scholarly conference on the Arabian Peninsula. The objects, spearheads, thin discs, and fragments of what appears to be a polished alloy, are unlike anything ever documented from the Iron Age of the region. Their composition, measured by portable X-ray fluorescence, shows a startling mixture of copper, tin, and a trace of arsenic, but also a significant proportion of nickel and cobalt, metals that were not known to be smelted in the Arabian deserts until the early medieval period, if at all. Even more perplexing, the forging marks on the spearheads reveal a technique akin to pattern welding, a process that requires heating, folding, and hammering layers of metal in a controlled fashion. This level of metallurgical mastery suggests a knowledge base far beyond the expected capabilities of nomadic tribes who roamed these dunes 2,000 years ago. Some researchers propose that the artifacts could belong to a lost trading enclave, perhaps a caravan hub that briefly flourished during the height of the frankincense routes, trading exotic ores from the Zagros Mountains for Arabian pearls and dates. Yet no contemporaneous written records mention such a settlement, and the surrounding sand bears no trace of foundations, walls, or even the faint remnants of hearths that would accompany a metallurgical workshop. Other, more speculative theories point to a possible contact with distant cultures, perhaps a forgotten offshoot of the Hellenistic kingdoms that ventured farther east than previously thought, or even a group of skilled metalworkers exiled from the burgeoning Persian Empire. In one hypothesis, a band of itinerant smiths, fleeing political turmoil, may have set up a clandestine forge in the safety of the desert's isolation, leaving behind only these silent testaments to their craft. Still, the carbon dating of organic residues found clinging to the metal surfaces places the artifacts squarely in the 3rd to 4th centuries CE, a period of relative stagnation in Arabian metallurgy. What makes the mystery truly chilling is the discovery of a small, perfectly circular disc, approximately 5 centimeters in diameter, engraved with a series of concentric circles and a series of glyph-like marks that do not correspond to any known Arabian script. When illuminated by a torch, the markings catch the light in a way that suggests intentional design rather than random scratching. Some linguists argue it could be an early form of a proto-alphabet, perhaps a forgotten lingua franca used by desert traders. Others caution that the pattern may simply be a decorative motif, its meaning lost to time. The Rub al Khali has always been a place where the earth swallows evidence, where sand erases footprints within days. Yet these metallic whispers have survived, defying the relentless grind of the desert. as researchers continue to analyze isotopic signatures and compare them with known ore sources. One question remains unanswered. Who possessed the knowledge, the resources, and the audacity to smelt such advanced alloys in a place where water is a myth and civilization a mirage? The answer, for now, lies buried beneath the dunes, waiting for the next wind to shift and reveal another fragment of a story that may rewrite our understanding of ancient Arabian ingenuity. What if the very earth beneath a desert oasis could ignite without flame, turning stone into a slow-burning ember that never goes out? In the heart of Saudi Arabia's ancient sandstone valley of Al Ula, dozens of shallow wells have puzzled explorers for centuries. Their surfaces are blackened, the surrounding sand warm to the touch, and on clear nights, a faint orange glow can be seen flickering from their depths. Yet no fire ever consumes them, and no fuel can be found nearby. Locals call them the burning wells, and the first recorded mention appears in a 10th century chronicle of the Nabatean traders who stopped in the region on their way to the incense routes. The text describes the wells that sigh like dying embers, a sign of the god's breath. When modern archaeologists arrived in the 1970s, they mapped more than 30 of these pits, each cut into the soft limestone, some as wide as a man's outstretched arms and several meters deep. Scientists have offered several natural explanations. One hypothesis points to the geothermal gradient of the Arabian Shield. Deep pockets of methane trapped in the porous rock could seep upward, igniting when they meet the oxygen-rich desert air. Yet gas analyses taken from the wells show only trace amounts, far too low to sustain a continuous blaze. Another theory suggests a mineral catalyst. The surrounding limestone is rich in iron sulfide, which, when exposed to the intense daytime heat, can undergo slow oxidation, producing a low-grade, self-sustaining exothermic reaction. This would create the gentle, ever-present warmth without a visible flame. However, laboratory simulations of the exact composition have yet to reproduce the observed glow. A more enigmatic possibility lies in forgotten human ritual. Ancient desert cultures were known to harness fire in symbolic ways, using eternal flames to mark sacred spaces or burial sites. Some researchers propose that the wells were deliberately lined with flammable plant resins, perhaps from the rare desert frankincense, that, once ignited, could smolder for months, their smoke drifting across the dunes as an offering to the sky gods. Yet no residues of such organic material have survived the millennia of sandstorms. What truly powers these ghostly embers? The answer remains hidden beneath layers of stone, sand, and time, leaving each traveler who steps close to feel the subtle heat on their skin and wonder whether the desert itself is breathing, or whether an ancient ceremony still flickers in the darkness, waiting for the next pilgrim to notice its silent, eternal glow. The wind howls across the empty dunes like a chorus of lost souls, and beneath its mournful sighs lie the remnants of a civilization that vanished without a trace. For centuries, travelers have stumbled upon a series of stone slabs, half buried in the ochre sand of the Great Basin, each etched with a series of spirals, wedges, and looping symbols that no scholar has ever been able to read. What language did these marks belong to, and why were they placed in such a desolate place, far from any known settlement? The first slab was uncovered by an unsuspecting camel driver in 1923, its surface pitted by time yet unmistakably deliberate. Over the next decade, a handful of archaeologists, Miriam Alvarez, Thomas Hargreaves, and a quiet German epigrapher named Klaus Richter, began to piece together a puzzling pattern. Each inscription seemed to follow a strict geometric order, a central vertical line, flanked by 3 clusters of glyphs that mirrored each other across the axis. Some symbols resembled the ancient Sumerian cuneiform, others the petroglyphs of the Sahara, but none matched any known script. One theory suggests the stones are a form of proto-writing, a precursor to language that encoded only ceremonial knowledge. Others argue they are a calendar, each wedge representing a lunar cycle, each spiral a solstice. The most unsettling hypothesis comes from a fringe linguist who believes the script is a warning, a message encoded in a language deliberately made unintelligible to outsiders, perhaps to keep a secret ritual hidden from the eyes of the world. Radiocarbon dating of organic residues trapped in the crevices indicates the slabs were carved between 200 and 600 years ago, a period when the surrounding desert was still a thriving corridor of trade routes. Yet no artifacts of pottery, metal, or even simple fire pits have ever been found near the sites, only the weather-worn stones themselves, standing like silent sentinels. Recent infrared imaging has revealed faint, almost invisible lines connecting the symbols, suggesting a hidden layer of meaning that only appears under specific wavelengths of light. When scholars overlay these ghostly lines, a faint image of a star map emerges, constellations that do not correspond to any known sky from that era. Could the desert script be a map to a place that never existed on any earthly chart, a portal to something beyond our world? The desert keeps its secrets close, and as the sun dips below the horizon, the stones glow faintly, as if the very sand is trying to speak. Every new discovery adds another piece to a puzzle that may never be solved, leaving us to wonder. Were these inscriptions a desperate plea for help, a celestial navigation tool, or perhaps the echo of a lost civilization that understood the universe in ways we can only imagine? The answer remains buried beneath the shifting dunes, waiting for the day someone finally learns to listen to the language of the sand. What could cause a cavern the size of a cathedral to vanish in an instant, leaving behind a jagged scar in the earth and a mystery that has haunted geologists for decades? Deep beneath the rolling hills of the Czech Republic, in a region known for its labyrinthine karst systems, an enormous underground chamber, once measured at over 300 meters long, 150 meters wide, and a dizzying 80 meters high, simply gave way. The event, recorded only by a handful of miners and a few terrified locals, still defies a definitive explanation. The chamber, called the Velká Propast, had been discovered in the early 1970s during a routine quarry expansion. Its walls glittered with stalactites that hung like frozen chandeliers, and its floor was a polished basalt plain, untouched by human hands for millennia. Surveyors mapped it meticulously, noting the perfect arches formed by limestone that seemed to have been carved by some ancient hand, not by the slow drip of water. For years, the cavern remained stable, a silent testament to the Earth's hidden architecture. Then, on a cold November night, a low rumble echoed through the quarry tunnels. Workers felt the ground shudder beneath their boots, and a deafening crack tore through the darkness. In seconds, a section of the ceiling, estimated to weigh thousands of tons, plummeted into the void, sealing the entrance and crushing everything inside. The collapse was so complete that rescue teams could only glimpse the jagged rim of the former chamber through a narrow fissure, a dark mouth that now swallowed all light. Scientists have proposed several theories. Some point to a sudden influx of groundwater, perhaps triggered by an unexpected snow melt that raised hydrostatic pressure and eroded the supporting limestone pillars from within. Others suggest a seismic tremor, too subtle to register on surface seismographs, that resonated along a hidden fault line, shattering the delicate balance of forces. A more unsettling hypothesis comes from local folklore. An ancient underground river, long believed to be a conduit for the spirits of the land, might have surged violently, its force enough to dislodge the massive stone ceiling. What makes this event especially perplexing is the absence of any visible warning signs. The chamber's structural integrity had been monitored for years, and microseismic readings showed nothing out of the ordinary. Even the surrounding rock showed no signs of stress fractures that could have foretold such a catastrophe. The suddenness of the collapse has led some researchers to consider the role of hidden cavities, voids filled with gas or air pockets that, when disturbed, can cause a rapid implosion akin to a subterranean bomb. To this day, the exact mechanism remains unknown. The site is now cordoned off, a silent scar on the landscape, and the Velká Propast lies entombed beneath tons of rubble. Yet the questions linger. Was this a rare convergence of natural forces, or does it hint at a deeper, perhaps still undiscovered, dynamic within the Earth's hidden chambers? As the wind whistles through the quarry's empty tunnels, one cannot help but wonder what other vast, unseen voids lie waiting, poised on the brink of an unseen collapse. The darkness below still holds its secrets, and perhaps one day it will reveal them. The desert does not whisper. It hums with a memory older than the dunes themselves, a memory guarded by the Bedouin who have roamed these endless seas of sand for millennia. What is the secret they keep, and why does it seem to bend the very rules of time? For generations, the nomads of the Rub al-Khali have spoken in hushed tones about a place they call Al-Qasr al-Makfi, the hidden fortress. It is not marked on any map, yet every caravan that has strayed too far from the main routes reports an inexplicable pull toward a solitary ridge, where the wind pauses and the sun flickers like a dying candle. Those who follow the pull describe a stone structure half buried in the dunes, its walls fashioned from a black basalt that feels warm to the touch, as though it has been kissed by fire only yesterday. The most baffling feature is the inner chamber. Inside, the air is unnaturally still, and a low, rhythmic ticking can be heard, though no clock or mechanism is visible. Ancient inscriptions, worn smooth by centuries of sand, cover the walls. Scholars who have managed to photograph the symbols identify a script that predates known Arabian alphabets, resembling neither Sumerian cuneiform nor the Phoenician glyphs. Some suggest a link to the lost civilization of Dilmun, yet no concrete evidence ties the two. Even stranger, a handful of Bedouin elders claim that when they spend a night within the chamber, they awaken not at sunrise, but at a different hour, as though the sun had slipped through a hidden crack in the sky. Their watches, set by the stars, run out of sync. The night sky appears to shift, constellations swapping places in a silent ballet. One elder, Abu Rashid, remembers a time when the moon rose in the opposite direction, a story dismissed by outsiders as delirium. Still, the desert keeps its secrets, and the Bedouin remain the only custodians of a place that seems to exist outside the linear march of time. What lies at the heart of Al-Qasr al-Makfi? Is it a relic of a forgotten empire, a natural phenomenon that tricks the mind, or perhaps a doorway to a dimension where chronology collapses? The desert wind carries no answer, only the echo of a ticking heart that refuses to be heard. And as the dunes shift, the secret endures, waiting for the next traveler brave enough to listen. What if the earth beneath our feet hides a secret network so vast that even the most advanced eyes in orbit can only glimpse its outline? In the dim glow of nighttime satellite passes, a faint lattice of straight lines and perfect right angles appears over remote swaths of the planet, cutting through deserts, jungles, and frozen tundras alike. At first, analysts dismiss the patterns as imaging artifacts, glitches, shadow tricks, or the mundane scars of roads and irrigation. Yet, when the same formations re-emerged across disparate satellite platforms, optical, infrared, and even synthetic aperture radar, their consistency grew impossible to ignore. The grid, stretching for hundreds of kilometers, seems to connect ancient sites that have long puzzled historians: the stone circles of Göbekli Tepe, the mysterious burial mounds of the Saqqara Plateau, and the isolated monoliths of the Altai Mountains. In some regions, the lines converge on subterranean chambers discovered by spelunkers decades ago. Chambers that contain artifacts of unknown provenance, bronze tools predating known metallurgy, shards of glass-bearing symbols never seen in any known script. One prevailing theory, put forward by a handful of geophysicists, suggests that these tunnels were carved during the last glacial maximum, when the Earth's crust was more pliable, perhaps as part of a massive water management system designed to channel meltwater across continents. Another, more speculative, hypothesis proposes a forgotten civilization with engineering capabilities rivaling those of the Romans, a people whose knowledge was erased by a cataclysm and whose underground arteries were meant to safeguard their secrets. What is most unsettling is the way the tunnels appear to intersect with modern anomalies. In the Siberian permafrost, a segment of the grid aligns perfectly with a series of inexplicable magnetic disturbances recorded by researchers studying the aurora borealis. In the Amazon basin, the lines cut through zones where indigenous tribes speak of the dark veins of the earth, legends describing hidden pathways that lead to other worlds. No excavation has yet reached the deepest points of this lattice, for the ground above is often too unstable, and the sheer scale renders any conventional dig a logistical nightmare. Yet, the very existence of such a precise, continent-spanning pattern forces us to confront a question that has haunted explorers for centuries. How much of the world's true architecture remains buried, waiting for the silent stare of a satellite to reveal it? As the images continue to be refined, the faint glow of those hidden corridors grows brighter, beckoning us toward a mystery that may rewrite the story of humanity itself, if we ever dare to follow it down into the dark. What if the endless seas of sand that swallow entire cities also hide a stone-crowned calendar, a monument that once measured the sun's journey across the heavens? Beneath the wind-scoured dunes of the Sahara's Great Erg, archaeologists have uncovered a pattern of limestone pillars, perfectly aligned with the solstices, the equinoxes, and even the rare appearance of the planet Venus. The discovery was accidental. A satellite image showed a faint, geometric shadow, a ghostly rectangle that disappeared when the sun moved. When a team of geophysicists lowered ground-penetrating radar into the dunes, the instrument returned a startling echo. A series of concentric circles, each one concentric with the next, like ripples frozen in stone. The first excavation revealed a shallow trench, its walls lined with basalt slabs, etched with symbols that do not correspond to any known script. Some scholars argue they are a variant of the Tifinagh alphabet, yet the characters are twisted, interlocked, forming a lattice that seems to map the movement of the sun's shadow over the year. One theory suggests that the builders were tracking the precession of the equinoxes, a knowledge that would place them at least 6,000 years ahead of any documented civilization in the region. Nearby, a series of stone basins were found, each filled centuries ago with a fine, reddish sand that glows faintly under ultraviolet light. The sand contains trace amounts of hematite, an iron oxide that, when heated by the sun, emits a soft, reddish hue, perhaps a natural sundial, a way to mark the passing hours when night fell over the desert. Yet the basins are oriented not to the present cardinal points, but to a position the sun occupied during the late Neolithic, implying that the entire site was deliberately misaligned to match a sky that no longer exists. Local Bedouin legends speak of a house of the sun buried beneath the dunes, a place where the ancients could summon the day's light during the darkest nights. Some elders recount stories of a silver pillar that glowed at the summer solstice, a beacon that could be seen from miles away, guiding caravans across the featureless horizon. While no such pillar remains, the alignment of the stone circles creates a narrow corridor of light that, for a few minutes each year, pierces the sand and bathes the deepest chamber in a golden beam. Skeptics point to natural geology, suggesting wind erosion could have produced the regular shapes, and that the symbols are merely random fractures. Yet the precision of the alignments, the consistent spacing of the circles, roughly 30 meters apart, matching the average lunar month, and the presence of the same motifs on artifacts found hundreds of kilometers away, all argue for an intentional design. If this buried observatory truly existed, it would rewrite our understanding of prehistoric people's relationship with the cosmos. It would mean that long before the great temples of Stonehenge or the pyramids of Giza, a desert people were charting the heavens, encoding celestial cycles into stone, and perhaps even using the very dunes as a protective veil against time's relentless march. The sand still shifts, covering and revealing the stone in an endless dance. As the wind sighs across the dunes, one can almost hear the faint echo of ancient chants, counting the days, waiting for the sun to rise again over a monument that has never been meant to be seen. The question remains, did the desert conceal a sophisticated solar clock, or are we merely projecting our own thirst for order onto a landscape that knows only the silence of the stars? What if the endless dunes of the Sahara are not merely a barren sea of sand, but the silent burial ground of a civilization that never left a name on any map? Imagine the wind-scoured plateau of the Tenere, where the ground shivers beneath a veil of heat, and think of the ancient riverbeds that once coursed through this desert like veins of life. Satellite imagery has revealed geometric patterns, perfectly aligned squares, circles, and spirals, etched into the earth where no human hand should have been able to carve them without a purpose. Some researchers argue these are natural formations, the result of wind erosion, yet the precision of the angles, the recurring ratios, and the way the shapes intersect suggest intent. Archaeologists have uncovered fragments of pottery in the Erg Chebi that do not match any known culture of North Africa. The shards are glazed with a mineral composition unknown to the local clays, and their designs echo motifs found on the walls of Göbekli Tepe, a site that predates the Egyptian pyramids by millennia. Radiocarbon dating places these fragments at roughly 8,000 years old, a period when the Sahara was a lush savanna, not a desert of stone. Yet the same layers also contain pollen from plants that vanished long before human agriculture ever reached these latitudes, hinting at a rapid, perhaps cataclysmic, environmental shift. Local Bedouin legends speak of the White City that rose from the sand and vanished with a single storm, leaving behind only the echo of its walls in the night wind. Some elders recall the faint hum of a distant bell, a sound that seemed to come from beneath the dunes, as if an entire settlement lay hidden beneath the shifting sands, its foundations protected by layers of compacted quartz. In 2019, a team of geophysicists used ground-penetrating radar across a remote portion of the Tenere and detected a series of anomalies. A regular grid of voids, each about 10 meters across, spaced precisely 20 meters apart. The patterns resembled the foundations of streets, plazas, perhaps even a central forum, all buried beneath a blanket of sand that has concealed them for thousands of years. What could have caused such a civilization to disappear without a trace? Some scholars point to the abrupt onset of the African humid period's reversal, a sudden desiccation that turned fertile plains into endless dunes within a few generations. Others suggest a massive meteor impact, similar to the one that scarred the Tunguska forest, may have struck the region, burying a thriving community under a cloud of pulverized stone. Yet no crater has been identified, and no definitive ash layer has been found, leaving the question hanging like a mirage on the horizon. The mystery deepens when we examine the language of the recovered artifacts. Glyphs etched on a stone slab resemble a hybrid of early Afro-Asiatic scripts and an unknown symbolic system that appears nowhere else on Earth. Deciphering them could rewrite our understanding of early human communication, but the slab is too weathered to be read with certainty. Still, the very existence of such a hybrid script hints at a cultural crossroads, perhaps a forgotten people who acted as intermediaries between the Nile Valley and the distant peoples of the Atlantic coast. If the desert indeed cradles the remnants of an unseen civilization, then every grain of sand becomes a silent witness, every ripple a veil over a forgotten story. The Sahara may be the world's greatest tomb, not for kings or pharaohs, but for an entire society whose achievements, beliefs, and very existence have been erased by time and sand. As we stand on the edge of these dunes, the question lingers. Are we merely seeing the surface of a story that stretches back farther than any recorded history, or are we forever destined to walk around the shadow of a civilization that will never step into the light? The answer, like the desert wind, remains just out of reach, whispering through the dunes.